and involve the students in the planting. If you're talking about placemaking, which is a big part of public art today, think about involving the people who the place is for. You can't do a better job of helping create a space for people than by working with those same people. Now, artists work with communities in a myriad of ways, and I'm not saying there's one best way to do it, but you should explore all of those ways and see what works. Again, it isn't a science. It isn't a hard science. It's an experimental science. The Minnesota Landscape Arboretum has annual temporary installations with architects and artists working together. This was a series of tree houses. This was one that allowed you to climb up and sit near a tree without doing any harm to the tree. Or an artist working with urban boat builders to create a solar-powered motorboat. In Lanesboro, Minnesota, an artist working with kids in the community to create medallions that marked certain places in their community that had some historic value, or the community felt was an important place. And she engaged them in workshops to create the material that was later cast, and they did a big iron pour, so there was an event associated with it. And then the medallions were placed around town, and again, as a reminder to the community of what the role of the artist might be in engaging the community in defining the places and marking the places in their own community that they felt were important. Public art is certainly more than visual art, and there are more artists of different disciplines wanting to get into the public realm and bring their creativity to audiences. So one group applied for a grant from us, and they said, we want to take our dance troupe on the road, and we want to go to the festivals that are already scheduled around the state, meaning there's already audiences. Why should we try to market our dance performances and bring people to us? Why don't we just go to them? But there aren't necessarily stages everywhere, so they just rented a flatbed truck, and it became their movable stage, and they would perform all over the state at festivals and then engage in conversations with people afterwards and really learned whether this was a good idea or not and how they might improve on it the next festival. Or was there a theme to the festival they could integrate into the choreography of the piece? The content of good public art should be informed by the context. Where is the public art? Who is the audience? What's the site? What's the history of the place? It isn't just arbitrarily placed there, or if it is, it's a crapshoot whether it'll have any resonance at all with that place and the people who frequent it. So it's a little bit of homework that's needed on the part of the artist. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Parking Day, but this has caught on since 1997 when a group in San Francisco called Rebar started Parking Day. And basically they said parking spaces are owned by the public. We pay for that space. We don't have to park our car there. We're going to use our parking space for something else on September 17th. You could have Parking Day events here on September 17th. You plug the meter, you roll out the sod, or you put up a badminton set. It's yours, and I don't think you can get a ticket, okay? I don't think you're breaking any laws. I could be wrong. There's some city people here today, but go along with it just for the one day. You'll see some really creative outpouring, and the idea of what is a park starts to come up as a really interesting question. And who decides what's a park and how to use a park? Or how to use the front lawn of the state capitol. This is Joel Sisson, an artist who worked in a South Minneapolis neighborhood that had problems, let's put it this way. It's a crack house neighborhood. He was afraid when these teenagers would walk down the street toward him, he'd cross the street. And he finally got fed up with that, living in that neighborhood, and felt he was either going to have to leave or face his fear. And he decided to face his fear, and he started having a dialogue with some of these kids in his community and realized really what they wanted was a job, if they could find one. And he started a workshop in his backyard building Adirondack chairs. And over the summer, the first time that he started this, what later became known as the Green Chair Project, they built 90 chairs, he and about 20 kids in the neighborhood. And they didn't tell anybody in the neighborhood that this was going on. And one morning, before dawn, they put 2 chairs on the front lawn of all the neighbors for a 2-block stretch of this really miserable neighborhood of South Minneapolis. people woke up in the morning, noticed they had these 2 Adirondack chairs in their front lawn. And they looked down, and the neighbor had 2 chairs, and their neighbor. And I'm sure some people thought everybody in the city got 2 Adirondack chairs for some reason, which I think is just a great moment. I wish I had been there to see that. It's kind of like reality TV. You want the hidden cameras there. But it had a tag on it that said basically, these chairs are for you. Do with them as you will. And then they later learned that the kids in the neighborhood that they feared the most were the ones responsible for making these chairs and giving them to them as a gift. And it got neighbors talking to each other. They're sitting out in their chairs. They're proud of their chairs, how they arranged them. And the dialogues that started became a legendary transformation of this neighborhood. If you don't get people talking to each other, you're not going to have change in the community for the better. So this small little chair project turned into this giant, now we want to put 1,000 chairs on the front lawn of the state capitol for one day. And Jack, can you help us? This is what I get from artists all the time. I got this idea, Jack. And, I thought it was a really interesting project. I said, when do you want to do this? Well, it's about 3 or 4 months from now. I said, how many chairs do you have? Well, we have a couple hundred, but we're working on it. I said, how much money do you have? Well, we're working on that too. So I started calling up funders, and one of the lessons I learned with this project was, if you can get the funders over to see kids building chairs, and when they have questions to ask about the Green Chair Project, you don't answer them. You let the kids answer the questions. The funders start saying, where do I write the check? And we raised $35,000 in 3 weeks. And they got 1,000 chairs up on the front lawn of the state capitol for that one day. And how did they get all the chairs there? The Dakota County Technical College truck driver training program volunteered 5 semis to come and pick up these chairs and do this. I mean, these are true stories of public art that if you don't hear them yourself, you wouldn't believe some of these things are possible. So then Joel goes, I want to take 50 chairs to our nation's capital. And I didn't believe that was possible either, but the following year, not only did we have 50 chairs there by the Washington Monument, but we had several large-scale green chairs, which is a whole nother story we don't have time for. Okay, now skyways. We all know what skyways are because we live in Minnesota and North Dakota and South Dakota. And even in some of the most southern climates, we have skyways now. So artists are starting to look at skyways. Why can't we use those as venues? And this is one of the first projects in the Minneapolis skyway system called Speaking of Home. I'll show you a few images inside the skyway, hopefully. There we go. Speaking of Home was photographer Nancy Ann Coyne's vision for how to tell the stories of 23 immigrants who've moved to the Twin Cities and now call Minnesota home. And what's really unique about it was these are not her photographs, even though she is a photographer. These are their photographs they brought with them from their home country that she helped select and scanned and had printed on scrim material 10 by 13 feet and mounted inside the windows of the skyway. This is over Nicollet Mall, over 12,000 people a day walking through the skyway. Now she's been invited by the city of St. Paul to do this project again with 4 skyways and 56 stories, and it's going to open in 2012. Artists have used billboards. It's nothing new. It's space you can buy. In some cases, a Clear Channel or CBS Outdoor Advertising are required by law to donate billboard space to nonprofits, hence opportunities for artists through nonprofit organizations. Here's another example. Here's a permanent billboard in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you could see some of the symbolism and iconography here. It's rare that a publicly commissioned artwork would take so much risk in commenting on the commercialization of billboards, but this artist got away with it. He actually had another element. He wanted to put razor wire across the top, and they said, that's going too far. I'm sorry. We draw the line there. How many of you have chain link fence in your city? Yeah, lots of chain link fence. let artists loose on construction fence and chain link. This is just one example of an artist in Seattle who took photographic images and transformed them into these plastic caps that snap onto chain link fence and create, again, a digital image. And now he's done a project in the San Jose airport, one of the largest murals in the country. This was a rendering of it using photographs of people's hands from the community. And of course, then you've got an incredible opportunity and great community engagement. Whose hands should be photographed and how do they represent the community? We could talk all night about street art all over the country and all over the world. This is in Tel Aviv. Now, when we think about street art, oftentimes the media portrays it as unwanted, illegal graffiti. But I'm telling you now, there's a whole groundswell of street artists that are coming into their own, and they're going to take over the world, whether we like it or not. And the other thing you should know is there's probably more money being spent removing graffiti in this country than there is being spent to commission all the public art combined. That's a sad fact to hear. But isn't there a way we can encourage the artistic practice of artists that are otherwise considered vandals? Well, in Tel Aviv, it's a whole other matter because this is one of the few forums on the street where you can actually have your voice heard. Memorials are another area we could spend hours talking about. This one, the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. Again, an immersive experience, hard to describe with slides. If you've been to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, you'll know it's more about the experience than what it looks like. Artists and architects collaborating, communities collaborating with artists. This one in Africa, dealing with genocide there. Artist Lily Ye, who in Philadelphia started a program called Village of Arts and Humanities. Just an incredible humanitarian kind of artist. Went to this village. This is the before shot. And they wanted to create a memorial site. So she worked with the community. They started re-envisioning this site. And this is what it looks like now. And within that space is a place for flowers and remembrances. How many of you have a problem with vacant storefronts? The downturn in the economy is an opportunity for artists who want to use vacant storefront spaces. This is not a new idea, but we've been doing it in Minnesota since we moved out of that gallery in 1978. Business owners would much rather have an artist installation in there than a for rent sign. It's much more likely to grab attention and have that space rented out than otherwise. So it is a great collaboration. You don't have to allow the public to go inside the space. Then you get into all kinds of liability and safety issues. But if the audience is the driver or the audience, pedestrian audience that walks by, there's countless opportunities, and it's fairly low budget. Again, socially motivated art. This was during the Republican National Convention in Minneapolis. It kind of speaks for itself. And this was an artist who took her project on the road, literally. It's a video photo booth. The project is called It All Matters. And when they park this wherever, at a public plaza or what have you, you can have yourself videotaped inside this booth with a variety of backdrops, or you can even pull something down and stick your head through if you want to have a different surround. And